Hi there, Lee Griggs, Arnold, rendering specialist at Autodesk. And just want to quickly cover how to toon shade this character model here. Okay, before I start, I'll just show the render settings I'm using. So we've got a low camera AA samples to give a very rough illustrative look. And I've changed the filter type to contour for the toon edges, by default it will be Gaussian, which won't render the edges. Just make sure you set it to contour. And I've increased the widths to give us some nice thick edges and a silhouette here as well. And then I've added a few images here. So we've got the denoiser imager, some tone mapping, and some vignetting. And you'll just increase the exposure there slightly. Okay, and then for the lighting, we've got a torus, which converted into a kind of ring light using a mesh light setting in the Arnold settings here. And just change the color and the exposure. It doesn't need to be visible because it's not in camera. And there's a little bit of atmosphere volume as well, so under the environment atmosphere volume, just to add something interesting in the background here. And then we've got a skylight here with some colour and a background plate. So if we look at the face shader, we've got toon edge by default. If we use default settings of 1, the edges are too thick, so I've just brought those down to 0.3, just distance the edges out. Under the mask color, there's an ambient occlusion shader here. So if I was to disconnect that, just notice it's a bit lighter in the shadows, whereas with it, just kind of adds a bit of some dark values here. So if I bring the back down here, you can see he's a bit grubbier, a bit dirtier. But I've increased that to 0.95, so quite high, so it's just a subtle effect really. And then lowered the angle threshold to 3, so we get more toon edges. By default it's 180, which is too high, so we don't see many edges. But if I lower it quite low, you can see the edges around his horns here and so on. And I've changed it to geometric normal as well to get some more toon edges. I've enabled silhouette, changed the colour, you can see it just there. So if I disable it, you can see around the edges of the model here. And again, I've just reduced the opacity just to make it not so obvious, and added a shader to the width scale. So where we silhouette cell noise, there's a cell noise shader to the width scale, set to whirly, and I've just changed the scale a bit, and I increased the amplitude. So we can increase that to make it more obvious, but 1.4 for that. So then we've got the base. I've just changed the base color from default white to give it a blue tone. And we've got a base tone map, which is giving us this half-tone effect. Want to find that shader, it's an OSL shader. If you go to the Arnold docs, type in OSL, you can go to this link here, which puts up the GitHub. Go to half-tone OSL, just copy the contents and paste them into the OSL shader here. Just this one here, just go into the base tone map. Make sure you compile it, and that will give you these attributes. Just rotating 14.5 degrees, so by default this should be 0, which is a bit too regular, 45, and then just scaled them down and added a ramp RGB to the halftone input value. So if I was to lower this to a black, should be a bit more obvious. We get more dots around his face, but I've just lightened it just to make it a bit more subtle. So it's just around the darker areas around his face. I suppose a bit too much. Let's bring it down a bit. Okay, let's go back to the shader, and then that's base. And then under the base tone map, we've got the tone map hue saturation in 732. That well, actually, I've got a color correct here, which is set with hue shift set to 0.5. So default looks like that. We can change the colors using the hue shift. It's settled on 0.5. And in the inputs of the color correct, we've got the image shader, which we're using for the base and the specular tone map hue saturation here. So I'm using an image here. You can use any saturated color image here in the documentation. I'll put a link in the description. There's some example images here. I'm using this one, which is an exaggerated version, very harsh transition between the colours. So if I was to disconnect that image, we would get the effect of the hue saturation tone map. And if we go to the image, go to the UV coordinates, and I've just enabled flip hues to flip the U value, or you can offset it as well. So by default it's 0. And we can determine how that tone mapping affects. And then again, the specular, that's with 0, that's with 1. So halfway, and a high specular roughness with 0, you can see reflection of the torus mesh light. So we want it quite high with specular values for the especially with the tone map and the tone map hue saturation. We've got a ramp going into the specular tone map, and then the same image used for the tone map hue saturation for the specular. And then under rim lighting, I'm using the shape name of the torus mesh light. So the torus shape should be this here. Just copy and paste it into the rim lighting name here. So if I was to reduce this to 0, you can see we're getting no rim lights here. I'll put it quite high, you can see the effect it's having. So we're tinting the colour of the rim light using the base colour of the surface here. So if I take that to 0, we're just getting the white colour on its own. And we can tint it using base colour here. So that's the rim lighting. And then finally, I've got a bump map here. So under geometry bump mapping, we've got a cell noise shader here. It's just to break up the shading on the skin here. So if I was to reduce the bump depth here, it's very subtle here, but if I put that to 0, you can see how smooth the shading is on his face. But if we just add a subtle, if I increase it quite high, so you can just see how much the bump map is breaking up his face. Using the cell noise set to whirly, but if we use a subtle amount, very low negative value here, it just helps to break up the shading, give it more of an illustrative look. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.